right, Unit 3, Module 1, Soul and Motown. Pretty much, if I say soul, it is kind of hard to define what soul is. It's kind of like, what is love? What is a wind? It's kind of hard to put that in a definition in some ways. But it definitely has, soulful music definitely has music that comes from gospel and blues music. And maybe a better definition of it is the characteristics of rhythm and blues and gospel that allows a performer to utilize these elements with enough freedom and expression in their most inner feelings and thoughts with an audience. Soul definitely has its roots in the South. Think of the Mississippi Delta. One of the biggest names in gospel was Thomas Dorsey, and you can go do some research on that. One example you can look up is Take My Hand, Precious Lord, and you can hear some of these elements of gospel music in there. Soulful music spread all over to various areas. Coming from the South, went to Detroit, Chicago, New York, and basically folks moved from farming, from agriculture jobs, going on to industrial. So you go to Detroit, well, you make cars in Detroit. Chicago's a meat packing plant. New York is, of course, there's commerce going on there because it's a port city. Houston's a port city. And basically, that's how all this soulful music goes from the South to being basically all these urban areas, and from the urban areas and go on all, basically around the world at that point there. The Apollo Theater, probably in Harlem, New York City, had so many careers that come out of there. And the 1960s Southern roots, and again, a lot of these musicians had these poor backgrounds. There's poor folks, poor people, and in there's a lot of pain, so and a lot of despair going on. And it's when this blues music really comes to be really predominant in a lot of ways. We have some record labels that I'll talk about. Atlantic Records is one, and Atlantic Records was started by Aaron and Jerry Wetzler's, and really with this music, they were ambassadors' sons, and they heard this music, and they wanted to record this great R&B soulful music they heard, and they named the company Atlantic for the ocean they crossed across to get to America. Offsuit of rhythm and blues, doo-wops, doo-wop music in here. Rhythm and blues music and doo-wop had this, and soul had this regional base in the South, and they were rooted in the South. Even they went else places like I talked about. Sax Records in Memphis, the Sax Studios and Volt Studios in Memphis. It's incredible. Again, some great artists came out of these as well. Well, let's talk about some elements of soulful music. One is emotional singing. You can hear how much emotion is coming out of the singer, and it's like the emotions from their soul themselves. Call and response. Now, this is really common in blues music as well as in African music. And I used to teach a song when I taught elementary music called Che Che Kule, Che Che Kule, and then the audience would, the group was sort of Che Che Kule, Che Che Kopisa, Che Che Kopisa, whoo, aye, whoo, aye. It'd go, and it's called leader, the call and response. The leader would give the call, and the response would be the group. And call and response is such a big part of blues music as well as rhythm and blues music as well. The leader sings and the chorus responds back. And in soulful music, it could be singers that respond back, or it could be instrumentalists that responds back, as you'll probably hear. And I got some examples of that. If you go to Google some traditional African music, you'll hear some call and response going on in there. In a lot of ways, and probably the hardest thing to define is what I call a groove factor. Whatever makes your foot tap, or your finger tap, your pencil tap, your head nod, that's the groove factor that goes on. It's really hard to define. If the beat moves you, you can call it the groove factor. And the stronger the groove factor is, the more likely you want to dance, the more you want to move to this great music that's out there. Well, we got some pioneers that we'll talk about. We'll talk about Sam Cooke, James Brown, Ray Charles. Sam Cooke, a good example to listen to is You Send Me. This was 1957. This is a good example of this in there. Can you hear the call and response going on? Is there a groove factor? Is emotional singing going on? Sam Cooke was a crossover from gospel, and he was in a band called Soul Stirrers. And also another thing about Sam Cooke, he was a smart business person as well. He was able to keep control of his music, and that's where you basically make your lion's share of the money is by controlling the rights to, if you listen to movies or sheet music, or every time they play a record on a jukebox or on the radio, you get paid a royalty on there, and it just this amazing sound. One thing that's unique about You Send Me is that the background group is white. Why do you think that is? Well, was it to get played on the pop radio stations at the time? Probably so. Again, that was a business decision. It didn't make music that was palatable for, and he never did it again. That's the only record he did this on, is You Send Me, with that, and that was one that you could actually get a lot of folks hearing your music. Ray Charles, What I Say. There's so many great tunes by Ray Charles, but that's probably one, especially with that keyboard playing. You hear that kind of a Latin piano blues riff going over and over and over again. In a lot of ways, it's sort of like a musical gospel. Shouts going on. It's kind of like a sermon in some ways, in a lot of ways, in there. And can you hear call and response? I'm sure you can if you listen to that piece. And is there a groove factor going on? Yeah, I think there's a groove factor definitely going on with that there as well. Well, we talk about the Stax Records, Atlantic Records, and again, Motown. It's another great record company as well, which we'll talk more about in detail. Atlantic and Stax Records, a good example of Atlantic recording would be Wilson Pickett's In the Midnight Hour. And Wilson Pickett, incredible musician. If you listen to it, are these musicians holding back much? Are they singing out? And it kind of reminds me a little bit of when we listened to Chuck Berry, Little Richard originally. Was he holding back much? No, not at all. He's just letting it out. He called all this emotion to come out. And when you hear that, a good example of a Stax recording, Stax record recording, is from Eddie Lloyd, Knock on Wood, and just incredible. Otis Redding, incredible musician, artist. Try a Little Tenderness. This is also a Stax recording. This is 1966. In a lot of ways, it's kind of a musical wedge. It's from soft to loud, and fewer instruments to more instruments, and it's just really powerful in a lot of ways. And of course, Otis Redding from Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. That's probably one of his big hits. Well, we'll get to the queen of soul, Aretha Franklin. When she sings a song, she makes it hers, and that's not to say anything bad. It's quite the contrary. That for someone to take a piece of music that's theirs and make it take somebody else and make it their own is amazing. Won many Grammy Awards. Incredible artist. Her range is incredible, powerful. A little bit of her past. Her dad was basically a minister on the radio, and the Reverend C.L. Franklin, and basically he brought up his daughter to be the next big gospel singer, and she crosses over. One I have on here is Respect, and find the Otis Redding's original version of Respect and look at the lyrics, and then listen to Aretha Franklin's version of Respect. Otis is great. Otis is singing emotionally. It's a great group tune. Aretha Franklin takes it even to another level, and that's what I mean about when she takes a song, she makes it her own. And in some ways, the original one by Otis Redding is probably talking about civil rights, the movement going on, and Aretha takes it and kind of moves to more of a domestic, to more of the women's rights level of it as well. So check that out and see what you think about it. I Think is another great one from Aretha Franklin. So many great tunes. And now we get to the godfather of soul, James Brown, born in 1933, Macon, Georgia. Number 2 all-time records behind Elvis Presley. He's number 1 in rhythm and blues hits with 116 chart hits. Amazing. Some nicknames: called Godfather of Soul, the hardest working man in show business, Soul Brother number 1. Just incredible. His voice is raspy and strong, and shouting over the top. He doesn't hold anything back. In a lot of ways, his music is very simple in comparison. And at the height of his career, he had 40 singers and dancers and musicians, and had this big tour that he'd go on. This amazing, had jets, 300 pairs of shoes, 500 suits, and a funky home. All this stuff was going on in the height of his career. Let's go back to 1956 with James Brown. Please, Please, Please. And if you listen to that, you can hear how many times did he say the word please and how many times did he say the word I. Amazing, isn't it? And for somebody to take that, it had to be so minimalistic, but it's so powerful. It's amazing in so many ways. And of course, I Got You, I Feel Good is a big hit right from him. One that's a little more political is Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, Part 1, and this is 1968. And if you look at some of the lyrics on there, we're tired of being a head against the wall and working for somebody else. We're people just like the birds and the bees. We'd rather die on our feet than be living our needs. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. And he had a couple of these tunes, these Black Power, Black Pride songs, like Don't Be a Dropout, Get Up, Get Into It. And he had a really big influence on the movement and so forth. A couple of other artists I just want to at least mention. Jackie Wilson, Lonely Chill Drops. He's an incredible musician and performer. Benny Keene, Stand By Me. And Ike Turner and the Kings of Rhythm, Rocket 88, which in some ways is kind of the first rock and roll song. So if you haven't heard that before, check that out and see what you think. Now we get to Motown. Now we heard the other record companies, and all full of this emotion, really soulful music coming out. And a lot of this music was not going to get played on the regular pop radio stations at the time. So now we get to Motown. And the thing about Motown that's a little bit different than the other record companies was that basically Berry Gordy's idea for his record company, and before he even had a name, he'd go over to the artist and say, hey, I think I'm going to start a record company, would you come? And they were thinking, no. So some guy with a tape recorder, you're going to start a record company. Yeah, really. Well, in about 8 years, it becomes this mega powerful record company. And basically, the theme for Motown was music for young America. And notice how it didn't say music for young black America. It was music for young America. They wanted to make music that everybody could like and enjoy. Good music with a good beat, good lyrics, put together well. And they actually had a deal where this is kind of famous, the sandwich rule. You're hungry, you have $1. Would you buy a sandwich or would you buy this record? And the answer was that you'd buy the sandwich, then you go back and work on the record again, because they wanted to make the record so great that you would rather buy the record and go hungry. And that's how much they wanted that music to be powerful in there. So Berry Gordy is a very important part. Smokey Robinson, incredible songwriter. One that pops in mind is Ooh Baby Baby is a great element of this soulful music that's there. There's just a lot of emotion going on. Marvin Gaye, another artist from Motown. Let's Get It On, and that was in the 70s, a little bit more in the 60s. And if I had to talk about one song about Marvin Gaye, that would be it. And definitely one you need to check out. You hear call and response going on. There's a groove factor going on. You hear elements of rhythm and blues in that piece. Holland Dozier and Holland are songwriters from Motown, and they basically churn out these hits. So it becomes like a factory in a lot of ways. Basically, there was Berry Gordy had really control over those artists. They basically had etiquette training. They had vocal coaches. They had rules about fraternizing with the fans. They basically were one big musical family, and a lot of times they would marry each other, played, sang, wrote songs for one another, and wherever you're at, whenever you got back on tour, you went to Motown. You took a shower, you ate, you went to Motown because that's where the action was at. That's where everybody was going to be at. Temptations, incredible. Probably the great hit is the way that you do the things you do. Just incredible, with all these different harmonies going on and the things that are going on. It's really amazing. And of course, My Girl, which was written by Smokey Robinson, and just classic song. How many TV shows and films have you heard that song on? Stevie Wonder started off as a pretty much as a child prodigy, and at 21 he wanted his royalties, and he set up his own 40-track studio, and he had full artistic control over his music for Motown. Superstition pops to mind as one to kind of hear this example of this independence. Supremes, of course, another really great example from Motown, and they had a ton of hits. Can't Hurry Love was one that pops to mind. Baby Love's another one. And you listen to it, what's going on there? How good is this There's music that's being played there. And in a lot of ways, and sadly with Motown, as time went on, the control gave artists like no ability to do what they want to do. And little by little, they left the company as soon as they could leave the record company. And sadly, in 1988, it was purchased by MC Records, so the independence of Motown was gone from that point there. But the big difference between Motown and Atlantic and the Sax recording companies and other soulful record companies was that it was, I don't want to say watered down, but it was definitely made a little bit more palatable for all audiences, and it could get played on the pop radio stations because it wasn't as emotional singing wise, and the subject matter was more boy meets girl type thing going on. It was words and lyrics that meant something to everybody, and it could be, and it wasn't going to offend anybody. Music for young America. Remember that as the key for Motown rock and roll.